I started thinking about my legacy all the time and what people would say about me at my funeral. And I was like, there's no way if I leave this earth, people are gonna be like, she served some good tea.
Hey y'all, Merry Monday, what's good? First off, I have to say thank you to the new extension to my family, CLEO TV. I'm so appreciative of you guys spotlighting me, sincerely. So I'm happy that we can extend this conversation to three dynamic women who exemplify resilience. I've watched them all just spin straw into gold, so to say. I've watched them all just reshape their trials into triumphs. So, all the way down to the left in this beautiful color blocking situation, we have Natasha Alford, who is an award-winning on-camera host, journalist, writer, and producer. She is driven by the power of storytelling to inspire and change people's lives. The NABJ called her the Emerging Journalist of the Year. And then in the center, we have my other boo, Necole Kane, who every day is depositing into her empire, which includes being the editor-in-chief of exonecole.com, formerly NecoleBitchy.com, and it serves as a women's lifestyle platform used to encourage and empower young women to share their stories. She's also an NPC bikini fitness competitor. What's up, what's up? Oh, hold on.
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh.
I'm now a pro IFBB fitness competitor.
You better edit that. You better tell an assistant or something to upgrade your bio. So last but not least, Charreah K. Jackson serves as an international love and success coach. She is the former senior editor of Essence magazine, is the author of Boss Bride, the powerful women's playbook for love and success. It is excellent. I've had her on Sway in the Morning to speak about it. She considers herself to be a master manifester, and the evidence includes interviewing Oprah Winfrey in her backyard. Give it up for Charreah K. Jackson. Natasha, you had an IG post and you said, well, the meme was, you are the bag, secure yourself at all times, which I agree with. And then I was wondering, what was life like before that type of epiphany comes, that level of confidence? You are the bag, but sometimes the bag has a hole in it. So if you guys don't mind sharing a time in your life where, yes, you did see the bigger picture, you understood your blessings, but you still understood the hole in the bag that you needed to patch. What were some of those insecurities like?
Well, everyone tells you to chase your dreams, right? It's on coffee mugs, it's in IG posts, everyone's like, just go out and go after it. And I remember I decided to pursue the dream of going into journalism and took a job on television as my first job. But something that happens to Black women often is that we're told to set our expectations low. So even before I graduated, they were like, just know you're not gonna make a lot of money. Right? And it didn't matter that I'd graduated from Harvard. It didn't matter that I was on scholarship at Northwestern. They set my standards low. And so when I took a $30,000 job, I was like, I guess this is just the best that I could get. And I was unable to pay the bills. And I remember I was at a pawn shop selling my iPhone and a pair of gold earrings that were a birthday gift. And I thought, wow, I'm a failure. You know, and you have to remember that sometimes there's short-term sacrifice for that long-term gain. And sometimes you have to do things that other people won't to get what other people can't have.
Amen.
And in that moment, I saw that as a failure, not having financial stability, feeling like people expected more from me. But I was making a sacrifice to get to where I needed to go. Fast forward, this question of securing the bag. It wasn't until I started to call people and open up about the struggle of not being able to pay my bills that people reminded me who I was. They were like, you don't have to take a $30,000 job. You could have negotiated that job. Why didn't you negotiate that job? And then I had to sit with myself and say, well, I accepted someone else's low standards for me rather than walking in and saying, this is what I can bring to the table. Right. And so after that conversation where literally somebody said, remember who you are.
Yes.
I decided, all right, it's time to break out, it's time to pursue my dreams. And so when I sat down at that next negotiation table, the salary was nothing like that. And I was able to pay my bills, but it took being reminded of who I was and accepting that some of the sacrifices that I made were going to be worth it one day.
Yes. Woo! Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what were you telling yourself? What was your inner dialogue the moment you said, I'm going to have to pick up these gold earrings, right, and this iPhone and go walk to this pawn shop? Like, what was in your head? Were you crying? Was this something you had already made peace with before you entered the store, or was it afterwards?
I didn't make peace. My mindset was, I can't tell anyone what I'm going through. I chose this, and it's my responsibility to push through. And I think that's something that we often are told, again, as women of color, right? You have to be strong. It could be a lot worse. You know, you're blessed. You're pursuing this creative path. You didn't have to do this. And so the idea of asking somebody else to help me, it didn't feel right at the time. And so I thought I would rather sacrifice these comforts or these luxuries so that way, you know, I could make it.
Right.
But the problem with denying that you have a problem is that ultimately it's going to come to a place where you can't deny it anymore. It's just going to keep coming back. And, you know, I had another low moment where, fast forward, I finally decided to leave that job. And there were, you know, a few different reasons and rationales that went into that. But I just had foot surgery, you know, planning out my exit, and I booked an appointment at the therapist's office, right? Because we're all mental health and therapy, and this is the wave, right? This is what you should do. And as I'm leaving my house, going down the stairs, men from the electric company pull up, and they say, are you Natasha Alford? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, we need you to make a payment or we're going to turn off your electricity.
Wow, they made a home visit.
Right. They made the home visit, right? And so in that moment, that's when the problem became real to me. And at 29 years old, I had to pick up the phone and ask my mom for that, you know, emergency help. But again, shame, right? Shame prevents us from getting the help that we need. And what I didn't realize, again, was that leaving that job was setting me up to get something better. But in that moment, I was going to have to surrender pride and ego and lean into that humility so I could get through this tough spot. But just because you're in that tough spot temporarily, it doesn't mean that's where you're gonna be forever.
Make sure that you utilize your friends. We cannot just have friends for high moments, for birthday parties, you know what I mean, for whatever twerking sessions at brunch. Like, when it is a low
I want to go
moment.
to brunch with you.
It's summertime, baby. But you know what I mean? Like, the full spectrum, the role of that friendship, if it's real, is pour in, right? Because we pour into each other, and it should be reciprocal. So thank you. I just found so many lessons in what you shared.
Thank you.
Necole, I felt you nodding a lot, and you're very transparent, going from, if you guys follow Necole, she spoke about, well, losing both of her parents, the journeying to having her blog, where her aunts, yes? Yep. Her aunts actually said, you have to leave because I don't know what's happening that you're doing on the internet. I need you to traditionally look for jobs, which then led Necole to go to Atlanta, I want to say. Yes, and it was a whole amount of couches that you were surfing.
Yeah.
But you really had a tight grip on a vision, even as it was being pieced together. Even if you didn't necessarily see what it was, but you knew the voice of it.
I never planned for what was next. So I was in this situation where I have this huge website. I couldn't really go to my friends and tell them I wasn't happy because they're looking at you like, girl, please. Like,
Right.
You want some of my problems?
Right. But that's because we focus on the surface a lot. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So in 2015, I had moved to Arizona because I started setting myself up for my new life. Like, I just knew I got to escape this. And the first way to escape it is to move. And I moved to Arizona. And I mean, I'm telling you, that day I put that letter up on the website announcing I was going to no longer blog. It was like you go into your job and you tell your boss, I quit. Like, you know, you start throwing stuff around and trash the workplace. That's how I felt.
I'm going to leave a scene behind.
But yeah, I posted a letter on my website, and I knew they was looking for the tea that day, so I know everybody was mad because it was Essence weekend. But I was like, I'm not blogging through another BET Awards, another Essence. Like,
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
And that was like a 4-page letter. Like, I remember.
It was.
that
I
weekend.
wrote a long letter about just it was time for me to. It's time for me to move on.
Yes.
And I mean, I've never felt so liberated in my life and so free. And I had no idea where my next check was coming from. But I knew it wasn't coming from, I just started thinking, like, I lost my parents, you know, they were 41 and 42 years old. I was about to turn 35 when I left my celebrity gossip site. And for me, I started thinking about my legacy all the time and what people would say about me at my funeral. And I was like, there's no way if I leave this earth, people are going to be like, she served some good tea. Like, you know what I'm saying? I wanted my legacy to be more impactful than that. You know, and then I started, like, really caring about the women that read my site and what they were intaking and the messages. Like, you know, I really cared about that. And so, yeah, I left my blog and my identity went with it, and I had no idea who I was after that. Not to get off subject, but I was just at a retreat, right? And they asked us, like, what are your accomplishments? What have you done since, you know, the last retreat? And it was there I realized I have a hard time telling people the amazing things I have going on in my career now. You know, now I'm in the practice of writing down how amazing I am every single morning.
Yes.
But if you ever ask me, like, who are you? Or I may bring up fitness or something, but I never bring up my new website and how great it is and how many readers I have and the video series and the events, because I never want to be tied to my career ever again like I was before. And so I'm now trying to recondition myself and still say you can go out into the world and tell them how great you are as, you know, the founder of this amazing platform for women. I have a hard time talking about myself now in that way when it comes to my career because I don't want to be defined by what I do anymore.
Peace out, Necole Bitchie. And then before Will Packer, who was there to really, like, remind you that you can build yourself back up? Because you said you didn't know. It wasn't like, okay, we're closing down Necole Bitchie, and then, boom, XO Necole came 24 hours later.
Yeah, I mean, it did come 24 hours later. I mean, it came 2 months later.
Okay, I'm like, girl.
I sprung up a new website fairly quick out of fear I was going to lose my audience. I really needed to take time to myself and figure out who I was, but I felt like I got to hurry up and act fast. So if it's going to be a new website, then I need to get it up, like, today. While they're still coming to the site hoping that I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back, but it's somebody new. So I launched a new site within 2.5 months of closing my old one. Like, didn't take any type of break. I started working on a new site immediately, just out of fear. Again, just holding on again. But I will say so I launched a new site, and a lot of money is going out. You know, I got to hire a lot of writers. This is a whole different site than the first one. A lot of money going out, no money coming in. And so I blew through, like, hundreds of thousands of dollars within, like, 6 or 7, 8 months. I mean, I'm, you know, there's an NFL player, Ariane Foster. He let me borrow money just to keep the site running. But
God bless you, King.
Just because, and he had never met me, but we had the same business manager. But all this money was coming out and no money coming in. And then finally I had to start laying off my staff. And behind the scenes, I'm like, okay, like, I've made this public, you know, I feel like the world is watching because I put this public note up there wondering what I'm doing next. I launched a new site, but I felt like I was failing because it's not making any money. And it got to a point where I laid everybody off. And there were 2 girls that continued to work for me, and they would, like, shuffle posts to make it seem like we were updating every day, even though we weren't. So we were rotating the same, like, 50 posts to the home page.
Right.
And my social girl, I mean, they're working without payment, you know, at this point. And I remember doing a video, and I put it on YouTube, and it's called What I Wish I'd Known Before I Left a Successful Brand. And I put it up, and I had went on a trip. And while I was on this trip, the YouTube video went viral. Like, there's all types of headlines, I think. And I always point out the Essence headline because that one cut me deep. I look over at her.
She was like, it wasn't me.
But the Essence headline cut me deep. And the Essence headline said, Necole Bitchie from boss to broke. And I mean,
they hit you with the alliteration.
I mean, whew. And for me, I think that one hurt me the most because I was still so caught up in legacy. And you're putting out to the world that this person used to be a boss, but she failed.
Right.
And I was like, I went from thinking I was controlling my legacy by closing down my website to now they've changed the narrative on me. And now my legacy is that she closed down her website and then she failed. She went broke. She's almost homeless. Like there was so many things attached to that story. She's about to go back and live with her aunt. And it broke me. It totally broke me. And I had to come back to the States. And I remember I had all these speaking engagements. And I just did not want to show up. I just wanted to be in a fetal position because I'm like, now everyone thinks I'm I was trending on Twitter, on Facebook. I mean, they talked about me on the radio in Atlanta. You know, a friend called. It was just everywhere. But I always say to myself, like, when you ask God to use you, you can't choose how he uses you.
Amen.
And, like, he had to show me at my lowest just so that next year people saw me and the website got acquired by Will Packer. But I feel like it was meant for everyone to see me at this moment where I'm questioning everything I ever did. And seeing me with no money and seeing me trying to struggle just so that, like, that moment was even more of a greater win, yes. I think, you know? Right. So, yeah, that was my feeling like hit rock bottom moment. Like, I failed a million times in my life, but I haven't had the world watching, you know?
Yeah. Because that adds a whole nother layer.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned that now most of my anxiety comes from just the pressure that I put on myself to, even after my acquisition, I'm always wondering, am I living up to the expectations? You know, every event has to be perfect. Every video that I put out has to be perfect because now I'm representing him as a company and as a brand as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. But I think, like, Will chose you because he doesn't want perfection. Like, listen to that story you just shared. You know what I mean? Like, the brightest moments of it required, like, the cloudy forecast at times. You understand what I'm saying?
And that video put me back on his radar because he was like, wait a minute. Like, you know what I'm saying? If I never put out the video, I don't think he'd ever would have came around and, you know, so there's, like, silver linings there as well.
Always just got to be patient with finding it. And sometimes it's buried. Gold is buried. Oh, God. Charreah.
Yes.
Battling cancer. We got Cheating Man.
Yes.
And then we have the loss of a dream job, too.
Yes. Laid
or not
in
even
a session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we put that all together into how that built you and didn't break you?
Healing is not linear, right? And so there's things that happened to me. I was diagnosed with cancer at 19. I went through the physical chemo and radiation, but the emotional healing I didn't do till I was 30. Wow. And so trauma will wait for you. And it'll say, oh, you ready now? Oh, let's unpack some of these things. And so I don't share what the world would call failures to make light of them. I don't wish cancer on anybody, but it definitely was a gift for me because at a young age, I couldn't act like I had forever to live my life. And so I lived my 20s, I worked hard. But the one thing I didn't put in that little list of some of my falls along the way was one of the original traumas, which was growing up without my dad. So I grew up in Atlanta from 5 to 15. My dad lived in LA, moved back to Atlanta in high school. And so literally, I'm in my early 30s. I'm pitching a book deal, and I do a personal development training. Shout out to Momentum Education here in New York, and it changed my life. I did not know I had trust issues. And then I do this training, and I'm like, oh, you out here, the relationships that are at the time at Essence, talking to people about their relationships, and you don't even see this big old boulder on your shoulder from daddy not being there. And so I was in a relationship at the time. My agent was pitching the project. And as I started to heal my abandonment with my dad, I realized how much I never really expected much from men. And so all of a sudden, I'm in this relationship. We've been together. We're talking marriage. Our mamas love each other. And I realized that it's not working. And so literally the same day my agent got the contract for me to write Boss Bride for my publisher, St. Martin's Press, I broke up. That morning I got a book deal to write Boss Bride. That evening I broke up with
No hesitation.
No. And I didn't know. I mean, spiritually, I could feel the untethering. Like, it's, at that time we've been together for years, so I knew. But in a moment of clarity, we were having issues. We were supposed to meet up and talk about it. He called to cancel. Oh, I can't make it. And I was like, oh, I don't choose this anymore. And it was just like very like, oh, I'm out. Oh, okay. Oh, we're doing this. Oh, we're out. But I could not have had the courage to do that until I healed, because my biggest fear had always been heartbreak. So I didn't end up the relationships editor at Essence just because I love talking about relationships. I ended up the relationships editor at Essence because I'd seen my mom go through a divorce, and I'd seen my aunt battle depression after a bad marriage, and I knew love was nothing to play with. So it was from fear I had built a sexy career. And so sometimes for very successful people, what looks like success is their trauma that is driving that train.
Wow,
And so I had to really heal to say, what would it look like if you trusted yourself, if you trusted God, and if you learned to trust men? You could have a very much more satisfying experience.
And did it take time for you to still enjoy that ride now that Faith was in the driver's seat? Because sometimes you can be addicted to drama in a sense when you're used to it, you know what I mean? Because it can make life more exciting. And sometimes when you're next to God, like, it can feel boring.
And I had surrendered parts of my life. So I talked about that. Me breaking up and getting the contract was in June. This was 2016, 3 years ago. But that March, I had hit a bottom where we weren't getting that many offers for the book. I had been passed over for a promotion I'd earned 2 years before. I'm in this relationship that's increasingly unsatisfying because I'm growing so much and we're not growing together. And so I hit a bottom, and I just remember like feeling low and praying. And it was the first time I ever heard God speak, and it was a simple sentence: fast until you hear from me. And I was like, okay, all right, I can do that. And it was the first time I went on a fast, and 8 days later is when my agent first called and said, hey, we got an offer. And then offers started coming, and fast forward to us getting a contract that June.
Wow. Kudos to your obedience. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I appreciate it.
It's hard. I told you Grits is the name of biography. I like food.
Right.
So. But when you get hungry for something else, when food won't, and when you desire a higher experience, it'll change your life.
Out of curiosity, what's like...
I didn't plan to tell all this, yes.
What's the most recent message you heard from God?
Oh, girl, you all...
I mean, you got this clear pathway.
I mean, it's clear when you clear, right? So I left Essence in February, 2 days before my birthday.
Cheers to new chapters.
Thank you. And so I've been in this new season of giving myself space to detox off of a 12-year grind in New York in corporate. I started working 4 days after I graduated from Howard, NEHU. What's up? It was more of a feeling than a word. So that time I heard.
Yeah.
This last week I felt it. And it was just, a peace, trust that better is here. It was a feeling.
Yeah, I mean, God created all the senses, so it makes sense that sometimes you would feel him, hear him, see him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keep you on your toes.
Yeah. Just because we're in this spiritual moment, and I feel such a assignment to Black women, I don't want to jump past the healing of the daddy pain. Because I pray, I got my sage, I got friends who have spiritual gifts, and I have a friend who is a dope psychic who I met as a fashion stylist. She came into her gifts, whatever. But I only say that to say, she said something to me, and I only say it in a room like this. She said, Charreah, part of your cancer diagnosis was from you suppressing what you felt about your dad. And so what I want to say to you is that when we don't process what we've been through, it will sit in your body. And so as a survivor, I would just want to say to you, heal whatever hurts you, let it go, do whatever it is you need to do to work through it, because literally if you don't, it's in your body. And imagine if you ate barbecue for 5 years and you never went to the bathroom. That's literally what's inside of us when we don't heal, is we're holding all this, we backed up.
Dis-ease, right?
Dis-ease. And so I don't often tell that story, and no, I do not blame my dad for cancer, and he's cool. We have a great relationship now, but I do want you to know when you hold on, it's stuck in you.
Right. Thank you.
That was heavy. Love y'all.
What are some things to do with our senses that will put us into an empowered state?
So mine would start, thank you for mentioning Charreah K. Jackson. I mean, there's not a Charreah F. Jackson. There's not another one. But I put the K because my middle name is Katie, named after my great-grandmother. And we have such ancestral strength. And so a lot of my strength, people, oh my gosh, you're so confident. And I often say, I'm not confident, I'm clear. So I'm clear about who I am, I'm clear about who I come from, and I have a connection. And so if you are looking to activate at a higher level in your life, you want to grab some of your ancestor power. And you do that by reading their stories, you do that by calling their names, you do that by really bringing them into your life in this season. And so I know so many of my blessings, so many doors are opening that I am not touching because I am connected to them in a spiritual way. And so we all got people prayed you into this room, into this city. And so when you start really being in that space, people like haters. I'm like, what? What is it? You can't touch. You cannot touch. So I know that really wasn't the answer, but whenever I look at old pictures of my family, it's just a source of power for me.
You say your blood is bold.
Oh, my blood is bold.
Necole, my boo thing, what would you share?
I always talk about my morning routine all the time.
Yes.
And it's only because I feel like we say this, you have to, I think, oh man, you had a conversation when I lived in Arizona. So God, I listened to God. And when I was in LA, he told me to go to Arizona. I had never been to Arizona before. I moved to Arizona on a whim, and it was like the most defining 2.5 years of my life. That's where I went through my transition. I went through self-discovery. I found out who I was without all the titles, all the, celebrities and all this other stuff. But getting back to my morning routine, I think Tracy used to always ask me,
putting on your spiritual armor?
Yeah, like how do I? And my thing is, I wake up people think I'm crazy, but I wake up every morning. I have my do not disturb on because it starts at night.
Let's go.
So I put my do not disturb on from 11 to 9.
I uninstall my Instagram from 9 to 9.
Yeah, because if not, you'll have people
7.
Disrupting your peace during that time. But I put on my do not disturb. When I wake up in the morning around 6, I have this whole, I put on my aromatherapy diffuser, my peppermint and rosemary oils.
Hey.
I fix my bed. That's very important.
First one of the day.
First one, I open my blinds. And when I lived in New York, I used to walk a mile and back, a mile to the gym and a mile back in. I would do a workout in between, of course. But during that time, people thought, oh, she's so obsessed with fitness. No, I had on my earphones the whole time, and I'd be listening to Audible books. I'd be listening to motivational speeches. And I felt like that 2.5 hours, 3 hours out of my day was me putting on armor to get prepared before I gave my day away, logged on the internet and I plugged into social media.
Right.
And it really helped me start the day with a positive mind frame and not rushed. Because when I was a celebrity gossip blogger, I would roll out of bed and just jump on my computer.
Right.
And I'm sure most of you roll out of bed and first thing you do, check your phone, you start scrolling Instagram. You done gave the day away and don't even know it.
Right. Natasha, share with us.
Everything that you said is what I do too, right? Because as a journalist, I'm covering a lot of Black trauma, right? Working at thecleo.com, writing about the deaths of people in our communities. And when I was a TV reporter, I was on the front lines. So I was the one knocking on the door to talk to a family after their loved one had been shot or killed. And so having that space where I'm disconnected from the internet was very important for me. And I think we're around the same age group, but we remember life before cell phones, right?
Beautiful.
And so I found myself in a space in the first year in New York just feeling really depressed, just feeling really resentful when I would get a text message, because I'm like, why don't people call each other anymore? Why don't people come over to visit anymore? It just felt so disconnected. But I decided that I was going to model the energy that I wanted in my life, right? So if I wanted people to do these things for me, I was just gonna start calling people first and inviting people over for dinner and doing those things that really fed my spirit, because I'm an extrovert. I get energy from being around other people. So that was another thing that was really important for me. I think another thing that I wanna highlight is just accepting truth, like radical acceptance of whatever truth is coming up in your life. And I remember the year that I was turning 30, my body was giving me signs that something was going on, but I wasn't really ready to accept that truth. I came from a school of thought that you just power through and you're strong. And I remember one morning I woke up and I couldn't bend my wrists. And so it had gotten to the point where I was ignoring the signs that the universe was trying to give me again and again and again. Went to the doctor, they called me, they said, you tested positive for something we think might be arthritis, so we need you to come back in, which was strange to me because I'm like, what 30-year-old has arthritis? I went to a specialist, and the specialist, he looks at my hands, he, inspects my knees, and he says, very brashly, by the way, "Oh, I think you have lupus." And for me, I think the world stopped in that moment. I'm like, well, what is that? And what do you mean? And I said, aren't I too young to have something like that? And he said, you're never too young for anything. Right? Just very cold and matter of fact. But it was an example of the truth, right? Coming face to face with that truth and accepting that this was now going to be my new reality. And for the first year, I resisted. I was like, this thing is not real. It's not real. Okay, it was maybe I couldn't bend my wrist that day, but I can just power through this. And so I went on a date, actually. I had a date plan, so I was like, I'm going salsa dancing. I don't care. We going salsa dancing. We're dancing. We're having a good time, hanging out at my apartment. And then all of a sudden, the pain came back. All of a sudden, it felt like someone had just taken a piece of glass and slashed my lungs, and I couldn't breathe. And I had to turn to him. I had to face the truth and say, I have to go to the hospital. I'm really sorry. And he said, of course, let's go. And so we went to the hospital, and thankfully he stayed. I didn't leave until 6 a.m. the next day. And again, in that worker bee spirit, I had my very first press junket that day where I was supposed to be on camera interviewing. And I went home, I just put my makeup on, put my hair together, put on an outfit, and I just went in. I didn't have time to look up who I was supposed to be interviewing because I'd been in the hospital. And so I'm, Tashina Arnold, she's the person I'm interviewing. I'm looking her up, and her Wikipedia comes up, and it says that she co-runs a lupus foundation.
Wow, God.
With her sister. And I was like, wow. So God is telling me to accept and embrace this truth. And so I say that to say that, you can deny what's happening in your life. You can deny when your body is saying, I'm tired, or I need a change, or whatever it is that's happening. But once you start embracing your truth, and for me, that meant taking my medication, going to the doctor, creating a new normal, then you can actually walk in freedom.
Thank you. Powerful. Thank you, guys. Natasha, Necole, Charreah, CLEO TV, this has been a beautiful evening.